You might feel like you have a special calling here on Earth, but you're not sure if you're a Starseed or a Lightworker. So, what's the difference? A Lightworker stems from the higher dimension to heal individuals and drive humanity forward. A Starseed comes from the stars themselves and can have many different roles. You're certainly not alone in the confusion. Sometimes terms overlap or people use the term incorrectly. This leads to a lot of confusion and, in the worst case, can distract people from the unique gifts they've been given. So let's make sure we know the difference between Starseeds and Lightworkers so you're able to complete your important work here on Earth. We'll start with a brief look at the similarities because they matter, and then cover a range of differences, and, most importantly, how you can spot the difference in yourself and in others. Starseeds and Lightworkers, the similarities. The confusion is not your fault and is all too common, because there certainly are some similarities between the two. In fact, when we talk about difference number 7 in a moment, we find that the two probably work very closely together. Both Lightworkers and Starseeds are higher vibrational souls compared to normal people. I try to avoid using that term, but it's probably the easiest way to describe it. Both groups help themselves and others through their light and positive energy, and both know they have a special purpose or calling here on Earth. They'll often feel that there's something different or out of place, like there's a calling for the something beyond the everyday daily grind. Lightworkers. Lightworkers are incredibly rare beings of light and energy. They are souls from the third dimension, 3D, and they have one incredibly important ability and purpose here on Earth. We've covered what a Lightworker is in far more details, but, as a recap, they help others. They lift everyone around them up without even trying. So, damn is it noticed when they do try. They might as well be the sole reason human beings have survived this long. Lightworkers bring light and energy into situations to help raise the vibration and frequency of everyone and everything around them. That light can be anything, from a person's mood to their health or an entire situation, such as a relationship or work environment. From the physical to the spiritual, Lightworkers make things better. They heal, they teach, they support, and they guide. By being here in physical form, Lightworkers advance the whole of humanity, usually one person at a time. They bring light into situations where there is none. They speak truth into dens of liars, and bring love and joy to places of sorrow and despair. Everyone is incredibly blessed if they have a Lightworker in their life, and the Lightworker themselves is an incredibly rare and unique position. Starseeds. Starseeds can often confuse themselves as a Lightworker because they'll feel a similar pull, but they are a different source. The clue is, partly, in the same. Starseeds don't come from the 3D, they come from the stars themselves, perhaps other galaxies, dimensions, or realities. Their visits are often temporary, but many of them seem to make multiple visits over different timelines. Every visit they make is important in some way, but their purpose each time is very specific, and they need to fulfill this mission before they can return. Starseeds and Lightworkers. The differences. Difference number 1. Their purpose. Both souls have a purpose in being here. For Lightworkers, it's to help and serve others. They don't only help the people around them, but they also help humanity as a whole raise its vibration. Starseeds have a much more personal mission to complete before they graduate from Earth and return home again. So while a Lightworker might focus on specific tasks and problems at a time, once their work is done, they continue on to the next problem or the next person. They'll keep driving humanity forward long after a Starseed is finished. Both purposes will seem similar on the outside, and they're both pursuits that bring happiness and positivity. But the drive and purpose behind the actions are quite different. When you start to look at Lightworker signs, you begin to see how to spot the difference between the two. Difference number 2. Their actions. Starseeds tend to have a very specific purpose to follow, and, once activated, will have a very hard time deviating from that purpose. Lightworkers work in a broader way. If they see someone who needs help, their immediate reaction is to respond. If a Lightworker sees someone drowning, they will jump into the river to save them without hesitation, even if they don't know how to swim. Sometimes Lightworkers push themselves to help others so hard they're overexerting themselves and have to learn some balance and self-love. Lightworkers don't have a predefined of things to do so. Sometimes they feel like something is out of place and they're searching for a higher purpose. Once they find someone who needs their help, they snap into action. As Lightworkers fulfill their purpose by helping others, Starseeds do it by finishing their specific task or challenge on Earth before they leave. Difference number 3, their energy. The energy between both types of beings is very different, and perhaps difference number 8 explains why that is. Lightworkers have light, positive, and powerful energies that can help, heal, or improve just about anything. They are light bringers. Starseeds also bring light, but their light is more cutting edge. Starseed light often cuts through darkness to expose the truth, so they are light. Lightworkers come from the 3rd dimension, 3D. Starseeds come from beyond that. This is true of how Lightworkers feel and how Lightworkers act. Lightworkers will often be less emotionally attached to situations than Starseeds. Difference number 4, physical attributes. There are certainly metaphysical differences between Starseeds and Lightworkers, but we can also look for physical differences between the two of them. I've covered some of the startling Lightworker physical attributes already, but when I'm talking about the physical attributes, I mean the way they physically move. Lightworkers tend to be open and free, even while the weight of the world is upon them and they're struggling to meet the demands of those they see and need. Their body language is light and free. They tend to have light and smooth movements and are almost celestial in their grace. Lightworkers can sometimes seem a bit awkward and stressed, but this is usually when they've taken on too big of a burden at the moment. Starseeds, on the other hand, tend to move slower and heavier. Their movements are more deliberate and they don't usually move in spurts as Lightworkers do. There's no inner struggle with Starseeds when it comes to taking action, like Lightworkers often feel, but their way of working is slower and they take time to consider each step. There is one specific physical attribute we do need to cover, which brings us to the next difference. Difference number 5, the eyes. They say the eyes are the window of the soul, and if the eyes of Starseeds and Lightworkers are anything to go by, this is probably true. Staring into the eyes of either of these spiritual beings will probably catch your attention compared to a normal person. There's that word again, I know. But there can be some stark differences between the two. The eyes of a Lightworker tend to feel a lot warmer. There's a sense of love and acceptance. Even if you've intentionally gone out of your way to annoy a Lightworker, their eyes are still going to comfort you in some way. Starseeds, on the other hand, have a very specific and intense gaze. Because they're not, strictly speaking, human, there's always something that might put people on edge. Perhaps it's because they're seeing something beyond the physical, or perhaps it's the sadness of missing their home. This stark comparison is likely because of difference number 8. We'll get to that. Difference number 6. How they help people. Both of these high vibrational souls are driven to help people, but how they do it, that is as different as why, which we'll get to in a moment. A Lightworker will immediately dive in and try to help anyone they see in a very direct and hands-on way. Starseeds will be much more likely to take action behind the scenes, working quietly and almost invisibly. There are a lot of Lightworker healers at work here, but it also seems, from my experience, that Lightworkers tend to enjoy helping people directly with their hands, whereas Starseeds prefer the non-tangible. Perhaps they're just not as motivated by human connection, or maybe they're looking to the bigger picture. Difference number 7. Their drive. Lightworkers and Starseeds are both here to drive others forward. However, their reasons for doing so are very different. I've heard it best described as Lightworkers are here to help light things up, and Starseeds bring light in. Perhaps one cannot work as well without the existence of the other. If there's no light in a room, Lightworkers will switch on the light. If the light goes out, they'll find another way of lighting it up, or call someone who can. Perhaps starseeds are sent to bring light to our universe, and the Lightworkers direct and weave it into the benefit of individuals. Lightworkers immediately want to help individuals, and humanity as a whole, to a higher vibration. They are already where they need to be, and they've got work to do. Starseeds arrive to do a task, and then they want to go home. If we put it bluntly, they're on a spiritual business trip, and that drive is very different. Difference number 8. Their source. This matters. I mentioned briefly that starseeds come from the stars, while lightworkers come from the higher dimensions. I've heard people say that this is a distinction without a difference, but I disagree. A starseed might be here to help humanity in a different situation, but they are not from Earth. They're not as able to connect with others and won't really feel quite at home. A lightworker is from a higher dimension, but they're from the higher dimensions of Earth. While they're very spiritual beings, they are also likely to feel much more at home here, and that's important considering their role is to lead humanity. This might be one of the easiest differences to spot. A lightworker will feel that something is needed to be done, and there is something more beyond the day-to-day, but they'll still feel decidedly human. Difference number 9. Their outlooks. Lightworkers tend to be very positive people. Even when they're facing challenges, they try to remain positive. Even under immense stress and strain, a lightworker loves their work and bonds quickly and energetically with people that they love their calling. Starseeds don't always share the same light-hearted view of life as lightworkers, but instead see things from a grimmer or more realistic perspective. Perhaps this is because they miss their home, or it's because they have a sole focus on one specific meaning, but this overall outlook is often apparent to those around them. Can you be a starseed and a lightworker? It's possible. If you're here and reading this, then you're at least spiritually aware enough to understand the possibility and what these rare beings are. The vast majority of humanity are not going to be a starseed or a lightworker. But in some very, very rare situations, a lightworker could technically be a starseed as well. I certainly haven't met anyone, and it might be a conflicting experience, but I suppose it could be possible to have a starseed take on a similar role to a lightworker and perhaps stay there.